Hello everyone, welcome back to another Rome Reacts. We are here today to watch ourselves another video for you. This one is with the Fat Electrician. So we're back to watching some more videos from him. And right now we're going to be watching one that's called USS No-Go, America's Invincible Concrete Battleship, Fort Drum. Now, honestly, I have no idea what this is about. I've heard of some ironclads which were used during like Civil War and things like that, but this is made out of concrete. So I'm curious as to what this thing is. So let's just give this a watch, see what it's all about, and yeah, if you do come to enjoy my reaction and my thoughts and feedback, just leave a little thing in the comments down below and tell me what your thoughts on it too. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you're invested. So let's get to it, okay? All right, we got that set and it's all good on my end. So yeah, USS No-Go, America's Invincible Concrete Fort Drum. I'm very curious about this since I'm really curious.
Ah yes, El Frale, that time the US military-industrial complex decided to play Pimp My Island. Today we're talking about Fort Drum. Yes, I realize that's a military base in New York. No, that's not what we're talking about. There's another Fort Drum. It's guarding the mouth of Manila Bay in the Philippines. It's also referred to as El Frale Island, America's unsinkable concrete battleship, or the USS No-Go. Basically, the US military took a tiny island and turned the entire thing into a gun, and we're going to talk about it. Right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Sheath. Okay, here's the deal. They're like normal underwear, except they're better because they have a pouch that you can stick your junk in and then your balls aren't stuck to your thigh. And trust me, it's just one of those things you don't know you need it until you need it, and once you have it, you're not going to be able to live without it. Let's face it, every good thing that's ever happened to you in your entire life would have been a little bit more gooder if you didn't have balls stuck to your thigh the entire time. And I know what you're thinking, what if I don't have balls? That's cool. Were you with people that did? Because if you were, they probably would have been in a better mood if balls weren't stuck to their thigh the entire time. You should buy them these underwear. Don't believe me? Ask the kangaroos. Those marsupials have known how awesome pouches are for like 15 million years. They've been hoarding the technology, but now Sheath is here to fix that. All I'm saying is give it a shot. Worst case scenario, you find out you actually do like having balls stuck to your thigh and these underwear aren't for you, and in which case Sheath has a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee and you're out nothing. I'm gonna have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. So why on earth did America turn an island into a giant gun? Well, our story begins in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. Why is America at war with Spain? To be honest, I'm kind of blanking out on that right now. Statistically, it's probably because they messed with our boats, so let's go ahead and double check that together. How did the Spanish-American War start? The USS Maine mysteriously exploded in a Cuban harbor, believed to be the Spanish. See, I was right. It's always the boats every single time. Honestly, at this point, Jordan Peterson needs to go back and rewrite his book because he actually wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life, and the fact that not fucking with America's boats wasn't rule number one seems like an oversight on his part. Anyways, so America sends a bunch of boats into Manila Bay to fight the Spanish. While they're headed into Manila Bay, they pass this tiny little rock island called El Frale, and on El Frale there was a bunch of Spanish artillery that basically tried to ambush all the American ships. It didn't really work, but it was a super good idea. Fast forward, America wins the Spanish-American War, takes control of the Philippines. So now with America in charge, they decided that they wanted to be able to defend Manila Bay, and they remembered back to how the Spanish almost had a successful ambush by putting artillery on El Frale, and that's when the Americans in charge said, hey, hear me out. Instead of putting artillery on El Frale, what if we turned El Frale into artillery? So the engineer was like, okay, here's the plan. We're gonna level the entire island perfectly tabletop flat, and then we're gonna build an enormous concrete bunker on top of it with 2 battleship turrets, each of which having 2 12-inch guns on them. So the engineer in charge draws the blueprints up, sends those off to the War Department to get approval, at which point the War Department is like, hold on, let me get this straight. You wanna level an entire island, build an enormous concrete bunker on top of it, and then you wanna equip it with 2 battleship turrets, each of which has 2 12-inch guns that we're gonna have to manufacture in Watervliet Arsenal in New York and ship them all the way to the Philippines. To which the engineer is like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. And the War Department is like,
I pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
because we're gonna do 14-inch guns, each of which is gonna be shooting 1,600-pound shells. If somebody tries to sneak into Manila Bay, we're literally gonna start shooting cars at them till they go away. So they start construction in 1909, and it takes them 5 years to finish. And what they end up with is Fort Drum. Its concrete is anywhere between 25 and 36 feet thick. The top deck is completely reinforced with steel, essentially making the entire fortress completely impervious to any weapon that exists at this point in time. Then the guns on top are 14-inch M1909 139 guns in a dual turret that was specially manufactured just for Fort Drum, and it is the only place they were ever used. This turret has armor that is 18 inches thick, virtually making that impervious too. Then, just in case being able to shoot cars at people you don't like while being inside of a bunker that makes you impervious to retaliation isn't enough, it also has 4 6-inch guns and 2 3-inch anti-aircraft guns. And inside the bunker, they have 6 months worth of food, their own power plant, and a distillery so that they can make their own clean drinking water. Basically, it's the world's best doomsday bunker. So it's completely done. It's like 1914. America has built this incredible weapon, and now, in true American fashion, we're not really going to use it until it's borderline obsolete, and then we're going to give it away to somebody else. So kind of fast forward through the next 20 years. I mean, there's always Army guys stationed there and on hand in case anything happens, but nothing ever does. It's kind of like being stationed on a naval vessel, and because of that, the Army guys that serve there give it the nickname the USS No-Go, considering it never fucking goes anywhere. Then, of course, during that same time period, World War I happens. After World War I, America downsizes their military considerably, then the Great Depression happens, and because of that, pretty much no upgrades or maintenance gets done to Fort Drum during that entire time. So for its first 2 decades, it receives pretty much no upgrades, it's already becoming obsolete. Then in 1934, the US government comes out and says, over the course of the next 10 years, between 1934 and 1944, America is going to move towards establishing the Philippines as its own sovereign nation. So obviously, they're also going to turn over Fort Drum to the Philippines, and because of that, they have even less motivation to do any upgrades to it, so none get done. Then during that 10-year time period, World War II kicks off in 1939, but America's not getting involved, we're minding our own business, and by minding our own business, I mean we're basically funding the entire thing through Lend-Lease, but, you know, we're not involved. Then Pearl Harbor happens in 1941, aka somebody fucks with our boats, now we're going to war. Less than 10 hours after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese show up in the Philippines, they invade, the American forces are not ready, and they all get driven down to the Bataan Peninsula, which as you can see is also at the mouth of Manila Bay with Corregidor and Fort Drum. For like the next 5 months, while American and Filipino forces duke it out with the Japanese on the peninsula, Fort Drum is pretty much shooting at any Japanese vessel that gets anywhere near it. The Japanese vessels are returning fire at Fort Drum, they're launching air raids, trying to bomb Fort Drum, none of which is effective at all. Also during this time, the Marines and soldiers stationed at Fort Drum rip all the buildings on top of it off, throw that shit in the ocean. They also tear down the 60-foot search tower and get rid of that as well. That way, the massive turrets can do a full 360 and be able to shoot in any direction. Then April 9th, 1942, Bataan falls, and the only thing left is Corregidor, Fort Drum, and 2 other small coastal forts. For weeks after this, the Japanese shell both Corregidor and Fort Drum with naval gunfire, as well as conduct bombing runs. Fort Drum is pretty much completely impervious to all of it, which infuriates the Japanese. Corregidor, on the other hand, is nowhere near as fortified, and they are hurting bad. Because of this, the majority of Corregidor's defenses have been completely destroyed, and the only thing defending Corregidor now is Fort Drum. On May 5th, 1942, the Japanese would launch an amphibious attack on Corregidor. Fort Drum would land direct hits on 2 Japanese landing craft, destroying them completely, infuriating the Japanese even further. Despite that, it wasn't enough, and Corregidor would fall on May 5th. The concrete battleship and the 240 men manning it are now the last holdouts in the Philippines against the Japanese, and it is...
And mind you, this is like outdated stuff, have not been upgraded for at least 20 years. And they somehow managed to keep it going.
Pissing the Japanese off, and in immediate retaliation for them taking out several of the Japanese landing crafts at Corregidor, they begin launching air raids against Fort Drum, and they are again completely ineffective. During those air raids, some of the Marines manning the anti-aircraft guns would manage to shoot down a Japanese bomber, only serving to piss them off even more. At this point, General Wainwright, the man left in charge of American forces in the Philippines after General MacArthur abandoned his men and fled to Australia, issued the order that all American forces were to surrender on May 6th at noon. At this point, according to the legend, the entire crew of the USS No-Go, aka Fort Drum, gets together and they have a conversation and talk about whether or not they want to even follow this order, because they think they can go toe-to-toe with the Japanese forever inside of this concrete monstrosity. Unfortunately, they would come to the realization that this decision had already been made for them, because at some point the distillery that purifies their drinking water became damaged, and without US ships being able to bring them water, they weren't going to be able to hold out. So, given that they have to surrender tomorrow, but they still want to fight, they decide, hey, let's get rid of all this ammunition that we have, and they fire at the Japanese ships non-stop as fast as they can for like the next 18 hours straight. And apparently, according to legend, it got so hot inside of Fort Drum that it was able to increase the muzzle velocity of the guns, and they were able to score more hits on Japanese ships that thought that they were out of range. And they continued to fire non-stop until 11:59 on May 6th, when they were finally forced to surrender at noon. They then proceeded to sabotage the guns, the power plant, and flood as much of Fort Drum as they possibly could, making it useless to the Imperial Japanese. At the time of their capture, all 240 men were still alive, and only 5 of them had been injured after weeks of combat. They would then be taken as prisoners by the Imperial Japanese, where the majority of the men would be tortured, starved, and worked to death, and it is believed that less than 30 of the men at Fort Drum returned home after World War II. Fast forward 3 years, 1945, America is now winning the war in the Pacific, and they have returned to the Philippines to reclaim them from the Japanese. At this point, Fort Drum is believed to be completely inoperable, and nobody has seen anything that would suggest otherwise until in April of 1945, an American PT boat would get a little bit too close, and Japanese machine guns would begin firing upon him from Fort Drum. This intel gets sent up the chain of command, at which point nobody really knows what's happening. Maybe they're trying to restore Fort Drum and use it. Maybe there's just a bunch of Japanese soldiers that are being barracks there. Who knows? Either way, Uncle Sam says, you know what? That's mine, and I'm gonna need it back. So at first, they try to bomb it with planes. Obviously, that's not gonna work. It didn't work when the Japanese did it. I don't know why they thought it would work now. Then they send out a cruiser to shell it with naval gunfire. Again, obviously it doesn't work, at which point, shit proceeds to get out of hand pretty quick. Basically, the chain of command didn't really know what to do, so they're like, hear me out. Let's just give the blueprints for Fort Drum to an entire platoon of Army combat engineers, aka the demolition men, and tell them to get rid of it, and the sooner they do, the sooner we all get to go home. So the engineers take the blueprints, they go come up with a plan. I don't really know how long it took them. I presume about the same amount of time it takes them to smoke a cigarette. That's probably not a coincidence. They come back to the chain of command. They're like, okay, here's what I need. All right, we're gonna need an entire company of infantry, 1,000 gallons of gasoline, 2,000 gallons of diesel, all the incendiary and white phosphorus grenades you can find, a 30-minute fuse, and a camera guy, because you're going to want to get this shit on video. And apparently the chain of command is like, okay. So a couple days later, April, Friday the 13th, 1945, the U.S. forces launch Drum D-Day. 2 American ships pull up, drop landing ramps onto Fort Drum, and all the infantry and combat engineers run out to secure the deck, at which point they start taking fire from one of the 6-inch guns. They all return fire, including the ships, until that 6-inch gun stops. Then they secure the entire deck, and the combat engineers get to work. The engineers then run a hose up onto Fort Drum and begin pumping 3,000 gallons of gasoline and diesel into the air vent of Fort Drum. They then proceed to put 600 pounds of TNT, a bunch of white phosphorus, and incendiary grenades on top of it, rig it up to a 30-minute fuse, light it, and fucking run. They hop back in the boats, they sailed a safe distance away, and then they waited and they watched. And this is what they saw. That explosion was so powerful that it shot the 2,000-pound hatch on top of Fort Drum 300 feet into the air. And if you watch the video a little bit closer, you can actually see the hatch punch through the top of the mushroom cloud before falling back into the smoke.
Wow.
The diesel fire inside of Fort Drum then proceeded to burn for 5 days straight, officially putting an end to any hopes of ever restoring it to its former glory. In the coming months, American and Filipino forces would reclaim the Philippines, Japan would end up surrendering, World War II would come to a close, and the next year, on July 4th, 1946, the Philippines would gain their independence, becoming their own sovereign nation, and thus taking control of Fort Drum, where it still sits at the mouth of Manila Bay, pretty much in the same condition that America left it, serving as a powerful reminder to not mess with America's boats, or anything that even kinda sorta looks like a boat for that matter, okay? Just don't. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
That's crazy.
I feel like I can give all the examples in the world, and I'm still gonna wake up tomorrow to news that somebody touched the boats.
I'm very curious now.
That America left it, serving where it still sits.
So they claimed that they hit the island so many times. You still see the craters of the impacts, and like they shelled it, they bombarded it, everything, and it never once fell. That's just crazy.
The mouth of Manila Bay, pretty much in the same condition that America left.
America left it. Yeah, just you, you have to realize that these guys, they built something to last, and then when they know that it's no longer usable, they decided to make it unlastable by throwing in diesel, propane, gas, enough munitions to blow its top, and that's actually really impressive with what they're able to do. And to think that it was once a Spanish fort, and they managed to like try to ambush at the time to American ships, and then the Americans like, you know what? Let's decide to have some fun with this and go all ham with this concrete barrier. And yeah, that's just amazing. So I'm glad I was able to watch this. I'll leave it there and call that an end. I'll leave a link in the description down below for you guys to check out. You can check out Fat Electrician up here, random video, including the subscribe button. Let's continue to grow. And as always, thanks for watching. Romans, salute.
If you like Romans content and wish to see more, like and subscribe to continue to support the channel.